Show me the money! Money!
Money, please.
Show me the money!
There's no denying Hollywood's top actors get paid a ton of money. Just look at what some of these actors took home for a single movie. Their salaries are often high, but where the real money often comes from is when they take a lower base salary for a percentage of the profits.
Money!
All of the actors we listed were the stars of their film, but in this video we wanted to take a look at actors that got huge paychecks for very little screen time. We'll cover 10 actors whose screen time we've split into 3 categories: little, even less, and none at all. But one thing that they all have in common is they all got paid way too much. Also, there aren't any actual spoilers in this video. A couple of surprise appearances are mentioned, but these cameos are very well known by now. Okay,
It's showtime.
we're starting off the list with Marlon Brando in the 1978 Superman movie. Brando was having a successful decade with both The Godfather and The Last Tango in Paris being hits. Warner Bros. Wanted to attach a big name to the film to help bring in an audience, so they cast Brando as Jor-El, the biological father of Superman. Problem was, Marlon Brando had a good agent and so much star power that he used it to his leverage to get a very good contract. His base salary was $3.7 million plus 11.75% of the film's profits, which equated to an extra $19 million. If you convert this to dollars in 2022, that's over $100 million. And his total screen time? 10 minutes of the film's 143-minute runtime. His name did help at the box office, but it is an infamously known film salary, especially when you compare it to how much Christopher Reeves was paid for playing Superman, only $250,000. Richard Donner, the director, said he was upset when he found out how much Brando was being paid, but also said that after working with him, he realized he was actually underpaid. Christopher Reeves did not share the same sentiment, openly saying that Brando phoned it in and how it's sad that since the press doesn't care if Brando has a good or bad performance, that Brando himself stopped caring as well. Marlon Brando's parts only required 12 days to do, and he was often very difficult to get out of his trailer, and he'd be paid extra the longer it took. He often had to be lured out of his trailer with food. I guess you could say he loved food because he also had an idea that he'd instead do a voiceover where Jor-El would be a bagel, as no one really knows how Kryptonians look like.
Great, so much for bagels.
Another actor whose salary raised eyebrows for their small but important role was Robert Downey Jr. in Spider-Man: Homecoming. Reprising his role as Tony Stark in Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. was paid $10 million, although only having a total screen time of 8 minutes. Compare this to the lead of the movie, Tom Holland, who was paid a total of $1.5 million after bonuses. Iron Man was the poster boy for the MCU, so having him in the film definitely helped in generating some hype. He was also integral in the story of developing a young Peter Parker. But were those minutes really worth that much? This is not something unusual for Robert Downey Jr. If we look at the highest earners in the industry this last decade, his name pops up very often, solely for his MCU films. Just look at these earnings per film. Iron Man 3, Infinity War, and Endgame each gave him $75 million payouts. His name also shows up the most in the list of highest earnings for a single production. But it wasn't always like this. For the first Iron Man, he had a salary of $500,000 with bonuses bringing it closer to $2 million. Those 8 minutes in Homecoming took 3 days to film. Robert Downey Jr. mentioned he had a blast with the filming because of how much he likes Spider-Man, but I'm sure the money helped as well. Looking back at the list of top earners, there was another name that often appeared, even leading a few of the years: Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. This last decade, he's been a box office juggernaut and was crowned the highest paid actor of 2022. He gets paid so much that back in 2010, he had a small role in The Other Guys as one of the badass cops along Samuel L. Jackson and was paid $9 million for it. I couldn't find his exact screen time, but it was definitely on the lower end. One could argue that the massive paycheck was worth it, as most of his screen time was action and it made the beginning of the film very memorable. And unlike the last two actors, I do think Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell were paid a bit more as the leads. Their salaries are undisclosed, but both have a history of earning a lot per film, with Marky Mark even taking the title of 2017's highest paid actor. After The Other Guys, Dwayne Johnson would only be paid under $10 million for a film one more time with Baywatch in 2017. Although only on the screen for a bit in The Other Guys, the audiences loved them. Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock have mentioned how people keep coming up to them and mentioning those characters and how they really want a prequel/spin-off with them. It's crazy to think this is the only time they've worked together. I'm sure if they ever do make a spin-off, Dwayne Johnson will be making bank. To finish off this section, we got Mr. Batman Nipples himself, George Clooney, and his role in Gravity. Compared to the other actors we've went through, his role was much more important, with his total screen time clocking in at 18 minutes. And his payout? $20 million upfront plus a percentage of the revenue. Playing as the other astronaut alongside Sandra Bullock, the studio was expecting the film to flop and chose to give both actors cuts of the revenue to reduce their salaries. But the film was a hit, grossing $723 million in 2013. Sandra Bullock, who also had a $20 million salary but a larger cut of the revenue, earned a total income of at least $70 million. Clooney, for his revenue shares, netted him an extra $14 million. Now, it is a lot of money per minute, but I found what he did with his bonus to actually be more interesting. He gifted all $14 million to 14 friends, $1 million each. Growing up, George Clooney had a lot of support from his friends when he was a struggling actor. When he was broke, they'd constantly let him stay over and loaned him money. Clooney said that if he got hit by a bus, they're all in his will. So why is he waiting to get hit by a bus? He packed 14 bags with $1 million cash each, drove them in an old beat-up van to his house, and called up his friends to come over for the surprise. Before we continue to the next section, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you've been enjoying the video so far. And comment what movies these blurred scenes are from for a chance to pick a topic for an upcoming video. We'll leave a hint in the comments below. Now, on to the really short screen times that still received some pretty hefty paychecks. In 2010, Julia Roberts starred in Valentine's Day. The film was packed with famous actors, somehow even squeezing in Taylor Swift. So packed that Julia Roberts, who was the top billed actor of the lot, only had 6 minutes of screen time. And along with those several minutes came $3 million and 3% of the revenue. With the film being a hit, her total income was brought up to almost $10 million. Pretty insane, as most of her screen time was just her sitting on a plane with Bradley Cooper. It went public that she earned $11,952 per word, and this was only calculated using her base salary, so it was actually triple that. But no one in the film had much screen time, as it was split pretty evenly. It was very convoluted, with many interconnected stories going on at once. Director Gary Marshall would make another film of this style the following year, New Year's Eve, but without Julia Roberts. This one also did well at the box office. And then in 2016, he'd go on to make Mother's Day, with Julia Roberts returning. She was paid $3 million for 4 days of work, and the film was a flop.
You can't keep getting away with it!
But Julia Roberts is no stranger to such salaries. She was the first actress to get paid $20 million for a single movie in Erin Brockovich in the year 2000. Her salary peaked in 2003 with a $25 million payout for Mona Lisa Smile, much higher than her Pretty Woman salary of $300,000, where she was still just a rising star. As for any upcoming lucrative films, she is set to star alongside Denzel Washington in Netflix's Leave the World Behind, where she'll be paid $25 million. Playing himself for a few minutes, we got Bill Murray in Zombieland, who was paid $3 million. His character didn't affect the plot much, but he was a fun addition to the film. His name wasn't even exploited in trailers to bring more people to theaters. And part of the reason for his higher salary was because of how last minute he joined. The Zombieland writers mentioned that they had wrote scenes taking place in a mansion owned by a celebrity, but also wrote alternate scenes in case they couldn't get anyone. Originally written for Patrick Swayze, who was dealing with pancreatic cancer at the time, the writers contacted quite a number of celebrities to join the film, including Sylvester Stallone and Mark Hamill, but no one was up for it. It wasn't until 2 days before filming where they went to Woody Harrelson to see if he had any ideas, after which he called up his friends Dustin Hoffman and Bill Murray. Hoffman couldn't do it, but Bill Murray told him to send over the script. No agents or anything, just a call from a friend. Bill Murray would go on to make more from those few minutes than he did as the lead in Groundhog Day. And to end off this section, we got Mark Hamill reprising his role as Luke Skywalker in Star Wars The Force Awakens. He was estimated to have made $1 to $3 million for his 1-minute cameo where he doesn't say a single word and stands in the same spot the entire time. And we thought Julia Roberts' income per word was high. Disney paid the legacy actors in the sequel trilogy much more than the new ones. Harrison Ford made $20 to $30 million for The Force Awakens, while Daisy Ridley and John Boyega only made between $100,000 and $300,000. Although Luke was a very important part of the story, I think we were all expecting to see him for longer than a minute. especially with how involved Mark Hamill was in the interviews leading up to the film's release. He did seem to be the most negative towards the film being made, but it could have been because of his very minimal role in it. He did mention that he did more work behind the scenes than you'd think. In a response to a tweet saying if you ever feel like you're wasting time, remember that Mark Hamill had to go to the script readings for Force Awakens. Mark Hamill tweeted that for the script readings, he was the narrator, helping the cast members work out their roles. In comparison, he made $650,000 for A New Hope, which was still a very high salary for a first-time big film. In our final section, we're looking at actors that got paid way too much for even less screen time. Less than a minute?
What do you mean, you people?
Yup. In fact, 0 minutes. It's common in the industry for actors to sign a pay or play contract where they will still be paid in full even if the film doesn't get made or the actor gets recast. For example, Johnny Depp in Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, aka the third one. 2020 was a bad year for Johnny with the Amber Heard accusations and the UK trial which supported the Sun's wife-beater article. In November of that year, the studio asked him to resign from playing Gellert Grindelwald, who he played in the last 2 films. Luckily for Johnny, he had a pay-or-play contract which got him his full $16 million salary even though they only filmed 1 scene. This made him the highest paid actor in the film without even being in it. To replace him, they cast Mads Mikkelsen. Not having the same energy, the character was heavily toned down to match his acting style. His performance still received praise, but for a compensation of about $0.5 to $1 million. With the recent Depp-Heard trial results, I'm sure Warner Bros. Is regretting their decision as the film came out during the trial and would have definitely benefited from the public support of Johnny Depp. Next up is Nicolas Cage as Superman. Yup, you heard me right. Back in the 1990s, after the success Tim Burton had with his 2 Batman films, he was supposed to follow them up with a Superman movie. Nicolas Cage was one of the top working actors during this time and was cast as the lead for the film. The film was eventually shelved, dying in pre-production. But Cage was paid $20 million before shooting even started. The public didn't even know about this film until some costume test pics were leaked in 2009. And the idea at that time seemed crazy as Cage was at the lowest point in his career.
How to get burned? How to get burned?
The film was supposed to have Superman fight Lexiac, a Brainiac and Lex Luthor merged hybrid that would have been played by Jim Carrey or Gary Oldman. The film was canned due to recent superhero movie flops, with Batman and Robin being the final nail in the coffin. In 2015, a crowd-funded documentary released that goes into more detail about the cancelled film. There's still a chance we'll see Nicolas Cage on the big screen in a DC movie though. With the new Batman movies coming out, Cage said that he's got a really good idea on how he can play the villain Egghead, but I'm not sure if that's a villain that can be pulled off with the dark tone the new films had. But with his recent return to form, I'm sure he can find a way. And our final actor to conclude the video with is Denzel Washington in American Gangster. Yes, he was actually in the movie, but his pay-or-play contract was still triggered, doubling his pay for the film. Denzel was signed to star in American Gangster in 2004 with a $20 million salary. The film will be shelved due to disagreements with the director, but Denzel's $20 million still had to be paid. Soon after, the studio would give the film the green light with Ridley Scott in the director's chair. But Denzel's original contract was voided due to the initial cancellation of the project. The studio had to pay another $20 million to get Denzel on board, giving him the biggest payday of his career, a total of $40 million. It wouldn't be until 2021 for Denzel to match his American Gangster salary with The Little Things. The film released to poor reviews and earned less at the box office than Denzel's salary before being exclusive on HBO Max. And that's all the actors we wanted to cover. Thanks for watching. It's pretty insane how much money they were all paid for their minimal or even non-existent roles. Let us know in the comments which ones you thought were worth the money, and until next time, have a good one.